Tuesday, April 30th, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So how do we salvage the dollar as a major reserve currency? Well, we have to go back in time to see what made the dollar the major reserve currency. And today, though, we're also going to look at why advisors to presidential candidate and former President Trump are saying that they could punish countries for not using the dollar in bilateral trade amongst themselves, which I think is crazy. It's what has driven countries off the dollar, the punishments or the sanctions, right? So that's what we're going to look at today. And we're going to look at also the debt and what presidents really increased the debt massively, and you'll be surprised by these numbers. But before we go further into this question of the dollar as the major reserve currency, you probably noticed that gold and silver are taking a rest from major moves in the last month or so, and it's normal. But personally, I think we are in breakout territory, especially for gold, and silver will follow. And it's with that in mind that I wanted to let you know that Miles Franklin has some very interesting specials this week. The other thing I would say is that the premium for buying gold and silver has come off quite a bit. And I think it's a great opportunity before it gets more and more expensive in terms of fiat currency to accumulate gold. Of course, I'm not saying you should go all in into gold and silver, because that's something I've never done. I've tried to do it whenever I can, kind of dollar cost averaging. So, for example, this week, Miles Franklin has a 1 ounce gold Australian kangaroo special, only $59 over spot. I mean, that's less than 3%. I think that's a good deal. And also for Krugerrands, 1 ounce silver Krugerrands, 2023 Krugerrands, only $3.10 over spot. So if you want to get in touch with Miles Franklin, make sure you mention Mario or Monaco 64. You can do it via email, info@milesfranklin.com, or you can call them on a toll-free number, 1-800-822-8080. So back to the Trump advisors saying that Trump is going to, if elected, of course, is going to punish countries that don't want to use the dollar. For example, if Brazil trades with Argentina in their own currencies, America could potentially punish them. If, let's say, Saudi Arabia does some trade deals with China, they could punish those two countries for not using the dollar. And I think that's crazy. And I'm going to do a bit of a regression theorem analysis, which is looking back at why the dollar became the major reserve currency after World War II. And it wasn't immediately after World War II and the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944. Believe it or not, it was actually in 1954. That was the year that sterling lost that claim of it being the major reserve currency. That's when the dollar reserves surpassed sterling reserves. That was 1954. So the dollar's major reserve status is not a God-given right. It's not something that is there just because we're America, we're the greatest country. No, it's because the United States earned that privilege, and it took decades. It started probably in the late 1800s as America industrialized and became the biggest industrial power in the world, and it accelerated especially after World War One, when the U.S. was not really that much involved in the war, but earned a lot of gold, of course, being under a gold standard at the time, the world. America accumulated a lot of gold reserves, and also during the Great Depression, with the European banking crisis that came about a couple of years before the U.S. banking crisis in '33, a lot of foreigners, a lot of Europeans sent their capital or their gold to the United States. And in World War II as well, America was not really hurt domestically, physically, and it accumulated even more gold reserves. And by the end of the war, the United States held 66% or 2/3 of the official gold reserves of the world. And that's why the dollar became as good as gold and the major reserve currency of the world. But it squandered that, of course, through deficit spending, wars like the Vietnam War, social programs like that Lyndon Johnson implemented in the 60s. And it's continued, even though there hasn't been an option to the dollar, and the dollar is running on its reputation. And of course, it got a boost from the Saudis through the petrodollar agreement. All that is unraveling, and especially with all the sanctions we've seen in the last few years or even decade. The BRICS countries have said, well, we're tired of accepting currency that you print out of thin air and giving away our resources to you. The other thing that has woken up the global south, or the BRICS, is the fact that they had to bail out the U.S. Well, China had to bail out the U.S. banking system back in '08, not just the U.S. taxpayer. And they've had enough. So for Trump advisors to come out and say they're going to punish countries for not dealing in the dollar, I think is completely counterproductive. So what does America need to do to not lose or maybe keep some kind of major reserve status for its currency? Well, I think the most important thing is to put its domestic house, and by that I mean fiscal and monetary house, in order. That's going to be very tough. And with that, I'm going to show you why. Because even under President Trump, deficit spending and the debt increased massively. As you can see here from Statista, in the last 50 years, the president that increased the debt the most actually was Ronald Reagan, 186%. And you see that Donald Trump increased the debt by over 40%. And don't forget, that was only over 4 years. Barack Obama increased it by just under 70%. That was over 8 years. And Joe Biden, up until 2023, had increased it by 16%. I know that number is probably going to get bigger by the time he completes his maybe first or last term. I would say it would probably be the last term. And I'm not defending anyone here. I'm just looking at the data. So those of you who think the possibility of a Trump presidency will solve all the woes for the dollar and for the fiscal situation in the U.S., think again. I think no matter who wins in November, the dollar has only one way to go, and that's south. Because with this kind of narrative or rhetoric, I don't think foreign countries are going to, buy into this. They're going to double down even more and try to get away from the dollar even more. So this story was reported by Bloomberg about 5 days ago. So let's quickly go through it. It says Trump advisors discuss penalties for nations that move away from the dollar. Again, that's a very arrogant thing. Maybe for Trump it's not, But for sovereign countries to have another country tell them what they should do, I don't think it will go down very well. BRICS nations lead global debate over reducing dollar exposure. Trump says Biden policies undermining respect for U.S. currency. But I'm not sure if Trump is 100% behind his advisors, but this is going to continue to undermine respect for the U.S. currency, what Trump advisors are planning to do. So let's quickly go through this. It's not a long article. Former President Donald Trump's economic advisors are considering ways to actively stop nations from shifting away from using the dollar, an effort to counter budding moves among key emerging markets to reduce exposure to the U.S. currency, according to people familiar with the matter. This is the interesting part here, which I think is very counterproductive. Discussions include penalties for allies or adversaries who seek active ways to engage in bilateral trade in currencies other than the dollar, with options excluding export controls, currency manipulation charges, and tariffs, the people said, speaking on the condition of anonymity. So let's say the U.S. trades with Mexico and they use the dollar. Well, with this way of thinking, China could put sanctions or punish the U.S. for not using the yuan. It's the same thing. That's the way the rest of the world is looking at this. And it's amazing that these Trump advisors are thinking like this. It seems like they haven't learned anything. A verbal backlash against the dollar's dominance in the global financial system gained traction in 2022 when U.S.-led efforts to impose harsh economic sanctions, punishments on Russia, a group of 20 nation, Russia's central bank, government officials, and some other 2,500 targets have had their access to the dollar restricted. So there you go, more punishment. That's what happens. People will move further and further away from the dollar. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, together known as the BRICS nations, discussed de-dollarization at a summit last August. The group is gaining global heft after inviting key oil-producing nations, Saudi Arabia and UAE, along with others in an expansion move this year. Saudi Arabia and the UAE currently peg their currencies to the dollar. Economic advisors to Trump and his campaign have talked about targeting that particular BRICS effort in a potential second term. For his part, both publicly and privately, Trump has said he wants the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency. Because I do. I want the dollar. It's almost like I'm going to stop the tide from coming in. It's the old King Canute lesson. You can't do that. You got to do it organically. I would not allow countries to go off the dollar, because when we lose that standard, that will be like losing a revolutionary war. That will be a hit to our country. Well, there is only one way, Donald Trump, for the dollar not to lose its standard, and that's sorting out your domestic fiscal monetary situation. It's sorting out the size of government. It's sorting out your belligerent foreign policy. I know you didn't start any wars, but the way you're talking here is not constructive. As president, Trump weighed forcibly weakening the dollar to support the domestic manufacturing sector. But now, so far, he has privately said he doesn't currently see the merits of dollar intervention. According to one person familiar with the matter, the Trump campaign referred to the former president's latest remarks on the dollar Thursday morning. With Biden, you're going to lose the dollar as the standard. That will be like losing the biggest war we've ever lost, he said, blaming President Joe Biden's policy for damaging views toward the dollar. And again, as I said, I'm not defending Biden or anyone here. I think this move away from the dollar has been happening for a lot longer than Joe Biden's been president. He's just accelerating it. And I think Trump would accelerate it if he uses, imposes these policies his advisors are talking about. So I'm going to stop right here. And as I said, yeah, this is not the way to salvage the dollar standard. As I said, and I'll summarize again, the way to do it is to sort your domestic house first, your fiscal policy, government spending, the size of government. You need to get your economy going again, and that's not Wall Street and hedge funds and private equity, but the whole economy, so that the whole middle class, the working class benefits. So you build a strong economy where you make things, where you export so you can earn foreign currencies, and you can, people respect your economy. People won't see your economy based on just money printing and deficit spending. That's the way you put the dollar back into, you give the dollar respect again to other nations. And I'm not saying other nations are perfect. What else do you do? Well, if you want other countries to use your currency, even in bilateral trade, you got to make sure you act in a friendly and diplomatic fashion and with respect to other nations. And until you do that, I don't see why countries should have to use your currency. I'm sorry, guys, that's the way it is. So let's quickly look at the markets this morning. It's 8:12 a.m. London time. And tomorrow, of course, we've got the second day of the FOMC meeting. The Fed's every 6 weeks they meet, and they will decide on rates. Rates are not going to move tomorrow, but people are going to be listening to the press conference, and they're going to be listening to the statement vis-a-vis, rate cut projections for this year. They have gone down, of course. But it's going to be an important day, and we've got non-farm payroll, the jobs data on Friday as well. So right now, spot gold is at $23.22. It's down about $14. High's been 37, the low 18. Silver has come off a bit. It's down about 1.3% at 26.76. I still think on a longer term basis, silver still looks good, as you can see by this monthly chart here. So the high today has been 27.20 and the low has been 26.64. The rest of the markets are pretty quiet. The stock market futures, the indices are all down very slightly. So nothing to write home about here. The dollar yen, that's recovered a little bit. I think we traded down to 155 after the dollar going up to 160. Right now we're around 157. We've got WTI crude trading around 82.50. That's unchanged. Brent is at 87.18. And quickly through the bond markets, the 10-year yield is pretty much unchanged, stuck around just above 460. And I noticed that the Japanese bond market yields there are down. The 10-year JGB yield is at 0.86. It's down about 6 basis points, which tells me the market still expects the Bank of Japan to remain highly accommodative, and that should continue to hurt the yen, in my opinion. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.